from. As I mentioned, I'm broadcasting from the City of Angels or City of Demons, depending upon who you ask. And we are on United Public Radio Network. That is 107.7 FM in New Orleans, as well as all the terrestrial affiliates. And also in the UK, we have Deprogrammed Radio Network in London and Leeds. Now, today we have two guests, another spectacular 2-hour, two-guest show. And the very first guest, right before we went on air, she just said something that was really fantastic. So before, I'm going to have her back on the show right now to say the exact statement, and I'm going to actually get some background from her as I introduce her to. So let me just tell you who it is, first of all. It is the happy medium, the only person who really can say the happy medium, because she was the first person to use that, and it's a trademarked name, and that happens to be Miss Jody Livon. Jody, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Right before, literally, I'm talking about seconds before we went live, when we were talking about happiness, you said something that really stuck to me so much that I said, hey, I'm going to get you to repeat it on air, and I even wrote it down. Go ahead and say that real quick, just so we can set the mood for everybody out there listening.
When you're happy, your intuition gets louder.
And I honestly couldn't agree with you more, and that is a great reason for everybody out there to be happy, because one thing that we're going to talk about this hour is why we all should be paying to our intuition, because that is one thing that Jody, you talked beforehand, one of the best kept secrets, if not the best kept secret, of the capacity of our minds and our brains and consciousness. Now, you told me earlier that you were fighting against your intuition, and something happened to you 30 years ago that got you into being a medium. What happened, and how did you start 30 years ago?
So 30 years ago, I stopped being afraid. I think it's even longer than 30, but I'm not going to do the math. I stopped being afraid. I knew that I was a medium. I didn't know what the name medium meant. I knew I could connect with spirits, that I could hear them. Back when I was a very little girl, I would say even before I hit the double digits, I was having conversations with spirits. So, but it was many years later that I started to feel more comfortable with it. I was afraid of ghosts. Isn't that funny? I was really afraid of ghosts. And I was overwhelmed by everybody's feelings. I could feel them as if they were my own. And so everything was always loud. There wasn't a lot of peace around me or inside of me. So as I got older, and quite frankly, got therapy, I got quieter inside, and I realized this is really what I'm supposed to be doing, is talking to people about using their intuition, having good boundaries, feeling happy, and that it's okay to be sensitive. It's okay to communicate with people on the other side. It's actually really good that intuition is a free and natural resource, and we should be using it. It's a gift from the universe, from God. And our gift back is what we do with it. And there's nothing wrong with it. And even as important, if not more, because it's boundaries. If you have boundaries, if you know where your space begins and where it ends, you're not constantly picking up everybody else's gunk. You're not responding to everybody else's moods. You're staying in your own space and living your life and not being manipulated by other people's emotions consciously or unconsciously. That's boundaries. And when you have those boundaries, your intuition gets louder as well, and you're happier. So you're not as easily manipulated. It's very interesting. I don't think people really consciously manipulate it as much as we might think they do. It's a boundary issue. It's, I'll be happier if you do what I want you to do. When you have good boundaries, you think, I'm going to be happy whether or not you do what I want you to do. I'm going to figure out I will be happy no matter what.
What does it take for people to start to recognize where their boundary ends and other people's begin? Because like you mentioned, I don't think a lot of people do intend to have an effect on someone else or manipulate them, but subconsciously, like you said, it happens all the time. And I think more people are doing it and encroaching on other people's boundaries, and yet they probably never even realized it.
I think that's true. You know, it's really funny. It's the big thing is and this is something that sounds poetic, and I wrote it years ago, your feelings are the wings of your intuition. And people do not want to have their feelings often because they're they're filled with maybe pain they haven't worked out. But if you start to look at the stuff that bothers you, have sort of at least a global understanding of what's going on for you, work it out in some way, then you're not carrying it around with you. You're not heavy with all of the stuff that you won't have, and you're not constantly responding to it. Mostly people respond to their stuff unconsciously. It could be that their parents got divorced when they were 7 years old. It could be that they were teased because they were overweight when they were little. It could be that they were rejected somehow, and that owns them. Just unconsciously it owns them, so they're responding to it. And it could be that somebody spilled coffee on you at work and you didn't get out the feeling that you had an ouch. But when you process it, then you just keep moving forward. You can be in your body and you can understand what you're feeling. When you get what you're feeling, hungry, not hungry, comfortable, not comfortable, peaceful, edgy, when you just get what you're feeling, you're in your own space.
You actually brought up a really good point that people are wearing their traumas, and unless they get their underlying problems worked out, they're always going to be cluttered. And this actually is why I think Big Pharma is thriving, is because they want to keep people medicated as opposed to working out the problems internally. And that's why I think there's such a rise of PTSD now that's being controlled with drugs as opposed to having it controlled by working out your own problems. And I'm sure you would agree with that statement. And you've probably seen, even just in the last 30 years, how they changed the first of all, PTSD, right? It used to be called shock or a shell shock from people who came from war veterans. And now it's in people who may have been in a car accident, may have lost their brother in a in a plane crash or anything like that, or like you said, or a divorce. It's all those little things, and I think the more that people are wearing them, the more that it's wearing them down. And so you said that people have to work these problems out, right, Jody? What's the best way you can tell people to start going and getting rid of those underlying problems?
To know that however you feel is okay. It's just perfectly fine however you feel. But your emotions, that's the story you tell yourself about what your feelings mean. Your emotions you can control. Your emotional reaction, you have some power over. Your feelings are just a gift from the universe. So then you tell yourself, if you have this giant reaction because somebody dropped a book and it sounds like a gun went off and that's part of what went on for you as you were exposed to violence that way, gun violence, then you say to yourself, of course I'm going to have this reaction. That reminded me of when the gun went off when I was 12 years old. But I'm safe right now. And I can go talk to a therapist about it. I can talk to a clergy member if I trust that clergy member and I think they can help me through it. I can talk to a friend. There's a lot of things that I can do to work it out, but it isn't me. It's my reaction to what's going on. That doesn't mean that's me. I tell people when they come to me and they say I'm depressed, I'll say you feel depressed, but you aren't depressed. That's the way you feel right now. And it's not a great feeling, and I honor that. I've had that myself. But it doesn't make up who you are. And the things that we go through, they don't define us. How we respond to them is what defines us. And I've been through my own stuff. I'm sure you have. You've met with people that have. I don't want that stuff to define me. I want as much out of life as I can get. I want as much joy and love as I can get. And I know that if I have good boundaries and I work out my stuff continuously, I feel better, I'm way more insightful, and I feel sad when somebody dies, but I don't feel as crushed as I might because I know that I can still feel them, and I'll see them and feel them again.
And you mentioned earlier in the first question that you used to be afraid of ghosts, and now you're involved with, like you said, talking to dead people, and you've been involved with ghost investigations. So you've already known the fact that we live on. And so that is one of the reasons I would surmise that you're not nearly as sad when someone passes away in this plane, because you're able to communicate with them after.
Right, and I communicate with them through love. That's how we all communicate with those on the other side, people that are in spirit. Because it is through love, their love for us, that they communicate with us. And it is our love for them that helps us communicate with them. That's plain and simple. It's love. And so I do feel that. And when I was little, I was afraid because I'd watch the news or I'd hear my parents watching the news and I'd see something about a murder and I'd start to think about it. And sure enough, that spirit would be right next to me. Or I would know who murdered that person and I didn't even have the language and I'd hide under my bed. And my parents would be like, why are you hiding under your bed? And I thought they could see the spirits too, but they couldn't. So, or spirits would pull my hair, try to get my attention because, mediums have an extra loud or bright light, and those in spirit don't care. They don't really care or really know if you are conscious of seeing them. They just know the potential, so they want your attention. And if you're not a happy person, you're going to be in a lower vibration. You're going to draw more negative spirits or lower vibration spirits. But when you're in a better place, like attracts like, you're going to have kinder spirits drawn to you. So I have met the nicest dead people. I've met them at ghost investigations. I've met them in people's old homes. I've met them at Target. I mean, there are spirits everywhere. But I do communicate with them. I just try not to do it constantly because it can be exhausting.
One thing also I would think when you actually are seeing them, have you helped solve any murder case? Because as you mentioned, someone would be killed and that you would sense that spirit right next to you. And you said this happened all through your life. You just started recognizing it around 3 decades ago, right?
I started working professionally 3 decades ago. I actually worked a little bit as a teen. But I was a little more afraid. I didn't have the boundaries that I needed, and nobody was teaching boundaries. So I got better at boundaries, and then I started coming out further and further out of the psychic closet. I've been working as a corporate psychic for a very long time, but it's been undercover. People knew that I was intuitive and that I was great in business, and I helped them grow their businesses. But it wasn't until I think I was probably pregnant with my second-born son that I started really coming out and saying, I'm going to do readings out in the open. I'm going to have a website. I'm going to talk about it. I'm not hiding it anymore. And I started doing it for individuals and not only corporations. And so that just it skyrocketed. People started writing magazine articles about me, and I was asked to write a book, and things just went from there because people love the intuitive process. And every medium's got their own way of talking about it and expressing it. And so everybody kind of likes their own version of Italian food. This is my version of Italian food.
And when you mentioned, obviously, when you are happy or love is the key phrase, that is how you communicate with the spirits because you emanate a higher frequency versus having fear. Like you said, that will bring more negative. And so that would make that statement true that fear actually attracts more negative statements. They feed off of it, of the emotions, right?
Right. Our vibe is not really who we are, it's how we are, it's how we're feeling, and it's a magnet. And so how we're feeling, it magnetizes other feelings, other spirits, other energy that's exactly the same. So if that's not a reason to get happy and feel better, you magnetize amazing things to you that you've wanted for years when you're in a really great space. And the good news is, when you're in that space, of course you care that you got the new job or you found the new outfit or that you ran into this old friend, but you were happy anyway. It's just a bonus that you got those things.
This is essentially what the law of attraction says, and the subject of the documentary The Secret, which essentially goes back to thousands of years. I believe that humanity then knew some of these principles that seem to have been lost over, I don't know what centuries, but it seems to us that I've guessed that we've been smarter decades or centuries before we are as opposed to now.
I would agree with you. People used to be healed naturally. They used to be healed energetically many years ago. And then things came in. Part of it is the whole thing with drugs, but it was even before then that it was turned away because we have our own personal power, but if we're utilizing our personal power, other people that want to be in power over us are powerless. And so why not squelch it? Why not say it's a sin? Why not try to turn you away? Why not say don't use those natural herbs because they're not good for you? Because there's a control issue there. And again, I have to say there's also protection there. I mean, nobody should be eating certain parts of weeds because they could get sick. But there's other parts of weeds, different weeds that we can dandelions. They can be healing. So I think a lot of it is about control. You understand what I mean?
Absolutely. And when you also mentioned, for instance, how certain things can actually control you as well in a negative way. For instance, I'm talking about like addiction to certain things. Well, then that's where you have to know your boundaries of what your body can sometimes fall into a trap without you necessarily knowing. Now, let me go back to a statement that you mentioned, that you used to work essentially covertly as a corporate lawyer, or not corporate lawyer, corporate psychic before you started coming out and working with everybody else. You said you started helping them essentially make more money. Can you, without violating any non-disclosure agreement, speak more in detail about what you did for them?
Sure. So let's say I go into a medium-sized business. There's 150 people that work in the business, and productivity is down suddenly, and nobody really knows why. On paper, it should be perfect, but I step into that place and I start feeling out what's going on. And there's a new supervisor. It's the son of one of the owners. And this person doesn't really understand how to talk to people and how to help manage them. Because any good manager knows that you actually work for the people that you're managing. You help them to succeed. You meet their needs the best way you know how, and they will succeed. And so when that gets crossed, I can pick up this funky energy. It looks like there's like a red haze to me, and it looks like a fence, a metal fence in red. And then I know that there's something going on with the communication between management and staff. Or I can tell maybe somebody's stealing. That's happened more times than I can count. That somebody is inadvertently stealing. Now, it's not just putting their fingers in the till, which does happen. It's taking a little off the side or not doing a certain part of the job because they're tired, and they just leave it for 6 months, and there's, $300,000 gone. I'm good at picking that up. The best part, though, is to teach people how to treat people. That's the best part. One other thing I've done is some places want to buy another building, and I've known that maybe that's a good choice and that's not a good choice. I give them my impressions about why it would be. I kept saying at one point that there was going to be a highway change and that the building wouldn't be visible anymore from the highway. And I'm so glad my client believed me, because that is exactly what happened 3.5 years later. But she was in a different space, so her business was thriving. It's those kinds of things that I pick up on. Business owners know when something looks good on paper, but it doesn't feel right. Because if you ask any successful business person or any successful person, they're going to tell you they're trusting their gut or their hunch. I just help them learn how to trust it more. And I charge them for it.
You said a lot of amazing things right there. First of all, that any good management or leader has to work for the people and bringing out the best in them, and also having their needs taken care of, because if they are, then they're going to be more productive. And when you talked about telling that company about that highway being built in the future, that steps into the realm of remote viewing. And I'm actually really glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask you, and this is something that I was thinking about long before I even talked to you before the show, is that does your psychicness or your ability to connect transcend time? And clearly in this case it did, that you saw something 3.5 years before it happened.
I saw the signs that indicated that it was a likelihood. But I wasn't really reading the future, because we create our own future and we can change it sometimes with a single thought. I'm reading the signs that indicate what will likely happen. But I'm not actually reading the future. It's against the Torah. I'm Jewish, and I think it's bad form to tell somebody their future anyway, because you limit them. So if you say to somebody you're doing a reading, you're going to have 2 kids, and something happens, and this person meets somebody who already has 2 kids, and they think, I don't want to marry this person, I want to have 2 kids. I'm not marrying him, I'm not going to date him, because he already has 2 kids, that means I would have 4 kids. People do some funny things in their mind when you tell them things. You don't want to limit somebody by saying, this is it for sure. But in this case, yes, I said, this is the likelihood, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm feeling it strong, but I could be wrong. I could be reading the signs incorrectly, because we're all reading signs. That's what mediums and psychics are doing. We're reading signs. We get this We get this information from the big bank of, intuition, or I always call it, I'm drawing a blank actually, and I've always used this phrase, but I'm drawing a blank, of intuitive knowledge. And everybody can do it, but it's coming through your own personality and your own insight. And so a sign to me might be different than it is for one of my favorite mediums, Mark Anthony. He might be doing a reading on somebody next to me and might see something differently than I do because there's a code to intuition. And what might make me happy or sad would be different for you. Does that make sense? So if I got a picture of an orange, I might think Florida. Somebody else might think, oh, maybe that person has a cold, they need an orange. It's all through a code. It's really cool.
What you said about future, I gotta say I agree with you hands down, Jody, because if people know their future, then subliminally, I think, and subconsciously, they will create it. There was a movie about this about 20 years ago with Ben Affleck called Paycheck, and in that movie, he was supposed to create some device that saw the future, and it's a lot of Hollywood-style action scenes, but in the very end, he essentially says that statement that he goes and destroys that time machine, or not time machine, time viewing capability, because he says that humanity, once they see something, then they tend to bend and move in directions to create that reality, even if it's not favorable. Just like you mentioned, if you tell someone that they're going to marry someone with 2 kids, or they won't, then they're going to start limiting their future. And the fact that each thought can change what is about to happen has to be very important that everybody understands that. And this goes to what we were saying before we even came on air, how dogma and things that are telling us that this is the absolute law limits our potential.
Completely can limit our potential. And the thing is, there's a lot of interpretation involved in the law too. So if something doesn't feel right in your gut, your belly, right around your belly button, it's not right. Find out something more about it. That doesn't mean it's completely wrong for you to do it. Get more information. I think that's a huge thing because your feelings matter. And if you're walking around in a funk, in icky feelings, which people get in the groove of doing because like attracts like, you change that by thinking something more positive. Anything that's more positive. I'm living in a snowy land right now. It's an icy, snowy land. And it is not fun to drive in. It is not fun to walk in. And I don't like being outside. But I love the fresh air, and it is fresh, clean air, and it's beautiful to look at when the moon shines on the snow. I find things that I like about it because that empowers me. It gives me joy. And when you're joyful, you're more powerful. When you're joyful, you're happier. When you're happier, you're more intuitive.
And that's exactly that statement that you said right the seconds before we went on air that I had to repeat on air because it is very empowering. And like I remind everybody listening, another reason for you to be happy because, of course, you want to increase your intuition. And Jody, you mentioned that you were seeing colors, especially from the people that were stealing. 2 things I want to ask you about that. The signs that are coming from people who are doing wrong in a company, do you think it comes from a place of guilt, or is it just that because it is something negative, it's emanating a different vibration and hence a color?
It's their vibration. Their vibration comes out a certain way, and there's a language to intuition, and it has to do with the code. The way that works for me is when that vibration comes out, it turns red for me when somebody's stealing. That's the way that my code works, because everybody's code is different. Like I said, intuition is a language. So if somebody's putting out that I'm stealing vibe unconsciously, what that's going to look like to me is I'm going to see a certain kind of red if I see the way they're stealing is similar to this person that was stealing in this company. I know that sounds really confusing, but again, if you meet somebody and you love them, like immediately you just think they're amazing, and you get this feeling right in your heart, a little bubbling in your heart. You're not having a heart attack. That's partially your intuition saying this is a great person. Somebody else has the same response to somebody that they think is amazing. They might feel it in their stomach. because their language of intuition is different. You just start paying attention to when you meet somebody you really like or don't like, or when you're in a situation that you do or don't like. Pay attention to how your body feels. Pay attention to the pictures that come into your mind. That's your intuition. That's your intuition giving you a leg up.
And as you mentioned earlier and throughout this, that is essentially what we all have to do, is start to pay more attention to what our body is telling us, because I think subconsciously we're telling our minds more, but yet our conscious has been, I don't want to say the word hypnotized, but because of mainstream media and what other people, I don't want to even say people as much as I think it's just the nature of the time. It's almost as if the higher technology goes, the less that we are able to let our subconscious read through our conscious, and that it's suppressed. Have you noticed that as well?
Yes, we're not as engaged in any way.
That's actually really sad too, and that's why, honestly, even though people require social media, the people, especially the younger generation, Jody, I fear for them. I mean, I go get a haircut, and yet when I try to speak to the person who's cutting my hair, everyone looks at me weird because they're all on their smartphone on Facebook, and it's like, well, wait a minute, that's disconnection.
Total and complete disconnection. I agree with you, and I think there's a lot to be said for that human contact, and that's what we're missing. I think all that social media is amazing that we can connect with people all over the world. On the other hand, I don't think we're connecting as much with the people standing next to us, and that's incredibly important. Whoever that person is, it's incredibly important. There's so much we can gain from each other. There's so much we give to each other just by being near each other. I don't know if you like animals. I love animals.
I do.
And some animals, have you ever noticed, like, standing next to a horse or a dog or just near deer, there's like this love that just comes out from them. I love that. And people can be very much the same way, especially the ones that clear their gunk, who aren't walking around with those unresolved feelings so much. I think it's great, and I think we empower ourselves when we connect with people. I think it's all about the connection.
And you're absolutely right. People, humanity, every single one of us needs that interaction with each other. And I'm not just talking about phone or Facebook. You have to be standing next to people, whether it be in a grocery store or anything. I've noticed that, for instance, if I've been sick or I've been unavailable for whatever reason, let's just say I've had a surgery and had to spend a couple of days where I didn't go out. Yet all of a sudden I start going out to even the store. You sort of feel a little bit of apprehension because you're not quite used to the way you were. And that's why I've noticed that people who don't have as much social interaction, I hate to say this, die earlier than those who are social all their lives and happy.
I have actually read studies many years ago that have said that too, because we need people. People need people. We need to be near other living beings, and we do. We forget how to interact. We start getting paranoid and think that we're coming across in a way that we're not. But it's much like when you get energy from exercise, which sounds funny because you get tired sometimes from exercise. You get energy from being around people too. Especially if you walk around thinking nice thoughts to the people around you. You should try this. It's so much fun. Go to any store, anywhere, and everybody you see, find something you like about them, and you start to buzz. Your soul just starts to light up, and good things start to come to you. And more than that, you just feel good. It's just fun, and that's the way you connect with people. That's how you learn. I mean, that's how you learn.
You know, I got to tell you, Jody, this is going to be great. Everybody out there listening, I really hope you are taking everything in as a giant reading and a big lesson of things that you yourselves can do to both clear out all that gunk, as Jody mentioned, of trauma that you've had, and more importantly, become happier and connect with people and be able to recognize your own intuition. Now, Jody, you are essentially a celebrity. You really are a celebrity, and you work with celebrities, so much so that every celebrity that was at the Emmys last year, and I believe Academy Awards, correct me if it's Academy Awards as well as Emmy, they received your book, Happy Medium, or if not the entire series, in the gift bag of all the nominees of the awards.
They did. I was so excited, and also some of my affirmations. They did. I've done this a couple different times, and the names of the people. I wish I see now I'm drawing a blank, but there's some amazing people that received this book, and then some of them call me, some of them don't. Some of them give my name to people they know, and then a lot of them like to have readings. So I'm not saying exactly those people because I wouldn't, but people associated have called me, and it's fun to connect with them because they're famous because people like their energy, and they like their energy because it makes their own energy speed up and feel better, and that's why they're famous, and that's why it's fun to connect with famous people because they know how to spin, they know how to make things happen for themselves, they know how to be happy.
You've done a lot, especially since you started embracing this. And on your website, as you mentioned, you offer services to corporations. And you also said how you started to break away from that and started to offer it to everybody by doing individual readings. And so you offer that as well. And of course, you also have events that you appear at. So I want to take each one, starting with your books that were in the bag for the celebrities. Can you talk about the book, The Happy Medium, and the entire series? Life After Life, that's another title, isn't it?
No, that's a good one. I could do that too. The first one is The Happy Medium, Awakening to Your Natural Intuition, and the second one is The Happy Medium, Speaking the Language of Intuition. The first one really validates people who feel like they're sensitive, feel like they're mediums, feel like they're picking up things they don't know what to do with. And I include a lot of the readings that I've done on people over the years in that, plus some exercises to help you become more insightful. And it's a big book, it's a fun read, and it's incredibly validating. And the second one I actually wrote because I was in a funk after losing a friend. A friend of mine died really tragically, and I had to use all the affirmations I've ever written and all the things I've ever known, intuitively speaking, to pull me out of my own little depression because I was so sad about losing her. And it worked beautifully. And so I put it in a book because I think we get caught up in how we feel and we forget that we aren't how we feel. That's just our feeling. And so this pulled me out of it. So you can use your intuition to help you out of a funk. You can, and I also believe a lot in therapy, P.S. You can use your intuition to help you grocery shop, to buy gifts for people, to find your car in a parking lot. To find love. There are tons of ways you can use your intuition to help find a meal that's going to feel good inside of you. Lots of ways to use your intuition. This one's filled with fun tools and techniques, lots of exercises to do that. And that's a really quick read. They're both really fun. I think, they're my little darlings. What can I say? I think they're really fun. And I'm going to be writing more books because I really love to talk about how intuitive everybody is and how magical it is to use it.
And that's one of the greatest things, is that you tell people that not only are they capable of it, that you offer exercises in your book to actually get people to become more intuitive, as we have through this entire show so far. That's why I was telling the people in the last statement to all the listeners to pay attention to this as essentially a free reading because of all the tips you're giving them to become more intuitive. And Jody, the reason why I mentioned Life After Life, from what I read it through in your bio when I was checking everything out of you before we talked, is because it stuck out in my head so much more than Life After Death, because life after life really is your life after life. To say life after death implies that your consciousness just is gone, when that's not what happens at all.
No, it's a good catchphrase to make people pay attention, but I agree, it is life after life because there is another life after life. This, in some ways, really is like a dream. When my understanding, when I've talked to people on the other side, meaning people in spirit, is there's a big life over there. There's everything you want is over there, but you're here because you can physically touch people here. You're here to have an experience that brings light and color to your soul. Then you go on to the other side again, which is really just another life, and you look at all the things that you've learned, and you gather that knowledge, you admire your own colors, you understand your own mistakes because you see them and feel them from the other person's perspective. So in other words, if you hurt somebody, you experience that hurt from their perspective, not as a punishment, but as a way for you to understand, oh, this is what I was meaning, but this is what happened. And that brings light and color to your soul. Then you come back here and you do it again. You do more things that you love to do with the people that you love, and you learn. So there's different kinds of life. But it isn't to say that you can't be sad when somebody dies. You know that they're nearby, but you don't get to hug them anymore. It's a different thing to get used to. And that, for me, was the sadness when my friend Colleen died. It was a different thing to get used to, and same with my dad and now my mom. But there is life after life. There's no endings. There's absolutely no endings. It's all good. And so if you know that, you're not as fearful when you're living. If you know that you don't have to be afraid of that, you go on and you do things that you take chances. You come on this great radio show. You write books. You sing in public. You do things that you push yourself to do, and it makes you feel so high, naturally so.
I could actually tell you, Jody, myself, I skydive, for that same reason, because I have that belief. And like you said, it does let you do things that you normally would say stay in your comfort zone. And so I always think it's great to, I don't want to say push the envelope, because that's really not what you're doing. It's being comfortable knowing where you're going to go. And like you mentioned, doing more things that you like with more things, people that you are around you. It's just a great feeling. And as you mentioned, the natural high, that's why I always take that line from Point Break, right before Patrick Swayze hands over the parachute rig, as we call it, to, I forget the actor's name, Keanu Reeves, who receives it. He goes, some people jab a vein for it, some people snort a line for it, or all you have to do is jump, because it's got that natural adrenaline, all that natural dopamine, and all those endorphins. Now,
great.
Yeah. You do something on mainstream media regularly. I believe it's ABC's the network that hosts Twin Cities.
Yep, Twin Cities Live. Yep, ABC. Absolutely. It's on KSTP here, but yep, it's an ABC affiliate. And it's it's called a magazine show. It's got two great hosts, Elizabeth Reese and Steve Patterson, and they have lots of fun things on the show, and I'm one of them. I get to showcase the intuitive process, and I do ghost investigations. I do something I call Sidewalk Psychic, where we approach people and say, would you like a reading? Because if you would like a reading, you can be on air and have a reading, and most people say yes. I read animals. I read the audience members. I do group readings. It is so much fun to show people how natural this is, and then people watching think, oh my gosh, I know I can do that too. I have good gut feelings. That's me too. And then they feel empowered, and then they feel happier, and then they're more intuitive.
Now, on your website, and I'm going to have you talk about it again right before we go, theintuitivecoach.com, you not only have obviously a link for media and for corporate coaching, and you offer your individual readings, but you also have your upcoming live events. Let's talk about your events and when the next one is coming up and what you do at them.
So I do events online, and I don't have the next one posted, but it will be posted within the next probably 10 days. And I do events in person where people can come see me. Sometimes the room's 100 people, sometimes it's several hundred, and sometimes it's 80. And what I do is I talk about a subject like we've been talking now, and then I walk around and I do readings. So there's usually a lineup of people in spirit, of souls in spirit, who are waiting to connect with the people that have come to my event. So I talk about that. I bring them through and give messages that way. I do little mini readings, and mostly I help people understand how intuitive they already are and how they can become more insightful. I love doing it. I feel completely naturally high afterwards, and most of the people that I work with do as well. And I'm starting to do more events online. It's the exact same thing, minus the readings so far, but I'll get there.
And, when I was asking you earlier about your name and how great it is considering what you're doing, it's as if fate gave you that name, Live On, because that's actually what you're teaching people. And when you just mentioned about your mother and your father and your friend who passed away, because you've come to terms with that, I'm assuming that you're actually have been in contact with them spirits since they've passed, right?
Yes, spirits choose to come to us. We can't really call them as much as we think we can. They choose to come to us, and they do. My dad actually scolded me a few months after he died because I was mad at my sister Randy, and he was scolding me. He says, you have to see it from her perspective. And I said, really? You're going to come through and actually say that to me instead of saying, good job as a mom or something like that? So we have the same dialogue while he's in spirit as we did when he was here. It's really fun. And when you start to get used to what their vibration feels like if you're thinking about somebody all of a sudden and you realize it's the anniversary of their death, remember how you felt, because that's them coming through to say hi. So absolutely I dialogue with those in spirit, but I let them come to me. And when I do readings, those spirits come to me. I do not call them.
Let me ask you about this, because I know you, and you've even mentioned it, that you do ghost investigations like you do on Twin Cities Live. Have you ever been able to help authorities solve a murder by communicating with the spirit of someone who had passed, their ghost, and them telling you exactly what happened?
So I officially don't do that work anymore, but yes, I have worked with the police before, and yes, I have helped through dialoguing with someone in spirit, and also through understanding the images that were coming to me that were clues to help find the body, essentially. So unfortunately, those cases are so sad, and they clobber me emotionally. They clobber me emotionally. You hook an IV up to me and put therapy in that. I need so much help after I'm done doing those cases. It's just not it's not my groove, because I'm so flattened by that. I can deal with people that come to me and say it's horrible, their child was killed, and I can help them find peace. But actually doing those murder investigations, that energy is rough for me. There are other mediums that do it, and I think do it better than I do. But I have done it, yes.
As you mentioned, Jody, that it is rough. I can imagine, and I don't think personally I could ever do such a thing, because every time I even hear, and I know that mainstream television news do their best to desensitize us to what happens. Constantly talking about a homicide here, a shooting there. But yet, when you actually stop and think about what just happened, it kills me. It really kills me. I feel so sad, as if I'm almost related to that person, or it's a neighbor that died, even though it might be something I heard on the radio or the TV. And to actually speak to that spirit and to find out what happened, and to show that people can really be that hateful, and that life for them can be so meaningless that they could literally take it away in a snap of a finger, has bothered me. And I know, is there any way, any hope for humanity to snap out of that and to wake up from that and to start being better to each other?
Yes, and I think part of it is to stop beating ourselves up for the way we feel, for starting to look at our feelings and get some resolution to it. Because that, to me, is what I've seen happen when people commit crimes. A long, long time ago, I was doing a reading on a man, and I said, why do I feel like you've killed 7 people? And he says, because I have. And I was a teen. I was really, really young. And I knew, I could see what had happened to this guy, and I am not excusing that he did that. And he's deceased, and I'm sure he understands what he did and the cost of it. But I saw what happened to this man, how parts of his body that we don't mention on air were started on fire. He was tortured. And that torture came out in him doing that to other people. I'm not excusing it, but what happens is we lose our light. And when we lose our light, we act like that. And it's not an excuse, but if we can continue to connect with our light, feel like we're okay, find resolve, apologize, make right things that we've done, we feel better about ourselves, and we're touching that beautiful light, the universal light. We have more life. People that do those things have turned away from life. They are so sad and so miserable that the horrible things they do are just a fraction of how miserable they really are. So for me, I try to have compassion for it, and it doesn't excuse it.
It actually goes to what you said both before the show, right as we started, and not too long ago, that we need more happiness. And one of the reasons for it is because happiness brings out more intuition. The light that you're talking about. And I definitely think, like you said, that a lot of those people that don't have that are because, and you just like you, well, don't. I don't excuse people for what they did, but it's understandable in that sense. In that it's a way to understand in their mind why they did, but not to agree with it. But yes, how if they've had something bad happen to them, that essentially their aura and their vibration emanates in such a different way that they attract negative experiences. And I think that could be one of the explanations, if I'm getting this correctly, Jody, of why they're doing that and why they're harming people.
Right. I think that's a big part of it. And if we can stay in our own space and have some compassion, not excuse it, report things that we see, then we're minding our own boundaries. We're maintaining our own happiness. We help light up the world. You know, if you met people that they walk in the room and the whole room lights up,
yes,
we all have that potential to be that person. I bet you already are, Dr. J, that person. So be that person and have compassion for people that aren't experiencing their own light. And that is one way that I feel like we can help heal this world, is by staying in our own space. You know, keep your eyes on your own paper, like in yoga, stay on your own mat. Don't judge. Just do your own thing and be appropriate about not gossiping and doing things like that. You light yourself up, and then the people around us that need to get some help, they actually have more room to do that because they're not using us as an excuse. They're judging me. They're the reason I'm unhappy. They did this. I'm unhappy. You're minding your own business. They have to mind theirs too.
You've really said a lot in this. You know, I don't want to say hour because we always start, 5 to 10 minutes into the hour. But you've really said a lot throughout this hour. That's positiveness and introspection, and the fact that if more people look and recognize their own feelings, and you even said a really true statement in the very beginning that we aren't what we feel, that we are that. It's the way we respond to things. It's how we respond to us is what defines us. That's the statement you made, right?
That's exactly right.
Now, I wanted to spend the rest of the time, as I told you about 10 minutes ago, that we'd come back to your website. And I want to tell everybody where they can find you on social media. And of course, I already mentioned your website, theintuitivecoach.com. And there is a link in our website of our own. Let's go ahead and tell people what you offer. I know I've already spilled the beans by mentioning the individual readings, the corporate coaching, the upcoming events, the media events that you're having through the videos, and also Twin Cities Live. And I'm assuming you could purchase your books there as well.
Right. Well, there's links to Amazon, and you can find my books in bookstores too, but I know Amazon is a for sure thing that my books are there. I also offer several free things, like free intuition boosting tools and techniques that I send out every month, every other month. And I have a blog where I put affirmations and talk about things like this. And I'm just starting to do something, so if you listen to it and the sound quality isn't perfect, it's going to get better. I'm doing little teeny mini podcasts that are like exercises or meditations that you can do on your lunch break that actually help you feel more relaxed and more whole and happier. So they literally are like 3 minutes long. And so there's links on my website for all of those things, plus, of course, as you mentioned so kindly, my upcoming events. And look soon, because I'm going to have a lot more things online. I love connecting with people. I have clients all over the world, and I really enjoy connecting with everybody.
What you just said, that you have those meditations that are 3 minutes that help you feel more happy and calm. I think that's fantastic because meditation, I think, really helps us to be far more introspective than I think a lot of other things. As you mentioned earlier, if we quiet our conscious mind and start to recognize our feelings, I think the best way that I myself have been able to find that is through meditation. And I'm assuming that's what you've realized, and that's why you offer it, right?
Exactly. And meditation doesn't mean that you're sitting going, although that's lovely. It's quieting your mind. It's clearing your mind. When you can do that and listen to yourself breathe, things just change for you. And it's a wonderful feeling. And it can take you a minute. You can do it in a minute.
Jody, it's been a fantastic time speaking to you, and I definitely want to have you back on the show. Again, I want to tell everybody out there, make sure you go to Jody's website. It is theintuitivecoach.com. One more time, theintuitivecoach.com. And before we go to our next guest, Jody, if you had one more final statement for everybody listening, what would you say?
Love everybody.
Well
Love
said.
everybody.
Thanks again, Jody. It's been a true honor to have you on. And like I said, we'll reach out to you for the next time we have you back on the show.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful. Thank you very much for having me.
And like I said, the pleasure is all on our side, and of course the listeners. That's one thing that I've been telling people to pay attention for when you are on, and I was proven correct by speaking with you that I think that the entire hour was pretty much one giant reading and a lot of lessons that people can have to be more introspective and to learn to have the intuition that is available to us. So again, the pleasure is ours, Jody. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, folks, now we're going to move on to our second guest, and we're going to be talking about brain management. That happens to be Zox Pro is the company. It's actually not speed reading. It's more, I'll let you actually hear from the man himself. It was invented by Dr. Richard Welch, and the actual person that's going to be speaking about it is Shannon Panzo. He is going to be live from Australia, and he's coming on right now to join us on this show. And folks, like I said, Zox Pro is a service that is not speed reading. There's a big difference once you start to understand what brain management really is. Shannon, you with us? Shannon Panzo. Let's bring Shannon back on. We just lost him. Like I said, folks, he's live in Australia, joining us straight in this hour. Now, he'll be telling you about Dr. Richard Welch and his invention that he used to have. And as I mentioned, there's a huge difference in terms of what people would call speed reading and as far as what we would be using for memory retention. And ironically, when you yourself are doing any reading, you're not going to remember the same way as you would if you were to do the brain management. And the best, like I said, he's going to come on. We're just trying to connect with him live in Australia. That is one thing that we have an international show. And look, we even bring you international guests. Shannon, are you on with us?
I sure am.
There you are. Okay, your volume is a little high. I was just telling people about Zox Pro, and before we can connect you, I was telling people that we're going to be speaking about brain management and how it's not associated to speed reading. But let's stay away from speed reading at the moment, and we'll touch Zox Pro in a little bit. But I want to ask you to define what brain management is to everybody and why it's so important.
Well, brain management is something that everybody should be taking on board for themselves. The main thing is everything that you do, everything that you're about, everything you've ever accomplished and ever will accomplish, any successes you've had, all start in the brain. So everything that you're doing has to do with the brain. The brain is your central system for everything going on, whether you look at it as your central nervous system or you look at how you've procured your job or how you've gone about doing certain things or whatever. So there's so many things that you can blame on the brain. So of course, if you can blame it on the brain, that's all the more reason why you should be doing everything you can to exercise the brain and bring up your brain power, and so that you have a lot more brain power to work with. This is historically the people that have more brain power to access are typically the people that we end up having as leaders for our organizations, our country, things like this. That's why they're leaders, because they're using more of their brain power. So yes, there's to define what brain power is, it's pretty much everything you do.
Is the memory used in mental photography different from the actual memory used in reading? Because I quoted a different percentage, meaning that when people read, what they actually remember, say, a couple months later versus I don't want to use the word memorize. Mental photography, photograph, what they photograph, the retention for that is significantly higher. So let's talk about the difference between the two.
Okay. Whenever you look at reading, if you feel that you read something and then 5 minutes later you can't remember what you've read, well, that's actually how most people deal with reading. And that's why reading is so inefficient. And there's specific reasons why within the brain, and I'll go over that in a moment. But whenever you're dealing with reading, the nature of it, and this is statistically proven, whenever you read something, you immediately get about 50% of the material. But over only 2 days' time, 48 hours, you lose 95% of the original 50%. Basically, you end up with 5% of what you should have. That little 5% gets transferred to the long-term memory. Whenever you're transferring it to the long-term memory, okay, you felt that you've learned something. Well, you know you've covered the material, but you can't remember it. You know that you've taken it on board, but it's obscured. You really don't have a good gravity for that information. So have you learned it? Well, not really. Now, whenever it comes to mental photography has, you're dealing with a completely different function of the brain, a natural function of the brain. See, whenever you first learned how to read, you had to be taught how to read. It isn't a natural function. Whereas the mental photography, you're born with an eidetic memory. Mental photography is just an extension of that eidetic memory. It's using the photographic memory. So whenever we're doing the mental photography, we're getting information at 100% instead of the 5%. We're getting it at 100%, and our brain retains it in long-term memory forever. So this is great. We just need to work at restructuring a few things, how to get it out in a reliable fashion, which we do. When it comes to what you'll remember in years later, you'll still remember all the details years later. And this is the wonderment of the brain management, because it has the mental photography always built into it. So you end up having a really great thing for you with the mental photography. Now, when it comes to, so mental photography starts at no less than 25,000 words per minute. Well, the average reader only reads around 250 words per minute. This is 100 times faster than that. That's where it starts.
Yeah, you've actually tested people, I believe, at 500,000 or more?
Over a million words per minute. But we want to give people realistic numbers to start with. And even at 25,000 words per minute, we have people that challenge us and say, oh, that's impossible. No, it isn't. Why is it possible? It's because you're not actually using reading. You're using a different brain function. You're using the function that is actually much more effective.
Now, let me ask you this, Shannon. This was first recognized, or at least the term was brought in, I think, 1972 by Dr. Richard Welch. Am I right about that?
Well, let's just say 1975.
75.
Okay. He started a little bit earlier than that, but the mental photography or the ability to access the brain on a subliminal level in this way, that was brought in 1975, and from that point on, it's been taught into the public market, basically to give people more brain power, more accessibility to information, and a lot of other good things. This in itself is the world's greatest brain exercise. Now, some people may say, gee, Shannon, aren't you going a little bit overboard? But really, no, we're not, whenever you see all the different things that this can do. And if I was to make a list, I'd run out of showtime before I'd finish the list. So basically, there's a lot of different things you can use for this. Anything that you want to do when it comes to the brain, you can make things better. If you want to influence your decision-making power, well, what's life based on? Your life is based on the decisions that you've made. You better be making good ones. This is a great way to make decisions. So you're going to be having a great way to exercise your brain in order to make better decisions. What about those relationships that are hanging out or lack of communication? In today's world, everybody has their nose stuck in their computer or into their phone. They're walking down the street, almost getting run over, trying to text people things. And to what avail? Well, there's a lack of communication that's going on these days because of it. So if you want to increase your communication skill, again, this is another avenue as to how you can actually see this take place as a skill set. If you want to become better at your job, of course you can become better at your job. You mentally photograph all the equipment around your job, and suddenly you start performing your job a lot better. Okay, so and if you want to take on a new job, you can do that too, because this will give you easy avenue to take up new information that you never had before.
When you mentioned the fact that we had to be taught to read, and that's something that I brought up not too long ago, actually, when I was promoting the fact that you're coming on yesterday, when I was talking about today, that when you read, what you have to do is you have to vocalize internally what you are supposed to read, and then you process that, and then you're supposed to take it to memory. And that's what you do in your conscious. But through mental photography, you're able to bypass your conscious and take everything directly into your subconscious, hence your memory. Is that the way it works?
Well, actually, I'm going to pull in a little bit more technical detail so that you can follow the path here. There's a part of your brain from the limbic system. It's called the hippocampus, and the hippocampus serves a few purposes. One of the things that the hippocampus serves is our short-term memory. Now, the short-term memory is fine if you're doing things on a short term, but if you're looking to put things in and have them long-term, well, we have a little bit of a problem, because the actual function of the hippocampus is to forget. It is not to remember. So we're actually taking, because whenever we read something, we put it in through short-term memory. We read this information, and magically it disappears because we've just funneled it into the one device, our hippocampus, that simply forgets. And it only remembers a small amount of material. So we better put all the emphasis on that material that we want to remember so that it actually will remember it and transfer that to the long-term memory. Now, this is actually how the device works. Well, we have this thing located in our brain, and it works exceptionally well at doing exactly what its job is meant to do. It forgets. And so that's why reading based on the short-term memory doesn't work. It's very ineffective. This is the reason why people don't learn when they read. You have to go over it again and again and again just to start getting more out of it. So yes, there's some definite problems there. Now, whenever we do mental photography, we bypass the hippocampus altogether. We bypass that conscious level function. We pipe this information directly to the long-term memory where it is held there forever.
Now, I've heard a statement, and I want to get your opinion on this. Some people, actually more than some people, have actually said that people don't remember what happens in dreams from memory, but people remember the emotions they feel, which triggers the memory. Would you agree with that statement? If not, what's your take on it?
Well, you go through different states of consciousness every night, several times. It's actually very cyclic. It's predictable and cyclic. We actually teach people in our seminars and in the coaching about this. And this cyclic effect, basically, whenever you go into delta, which is your deep sleep, from that point, you can't remember any dreams that you've dreamed about prior to that. So you forget all those dreams. The only dreams that you can actually remember are the ones that are most recent if you wake up, in this case, if you wake up in the state of alpha, so that you can actually remember those dreams, and you're only going to remember probably the last 3 to 5 dreams. And, of course, farther back you get, typically you don't remember a whole lot. The emotional state, whenever you're involved in a dream, the emotional state involved in a dream will definitely help you remember at least pieces of the dream, because you have something to latch on to. And of course, if you have something scary that's very frightening, negative emotions hold more value to us than positive emotions. So likely, if you're involved in a nightmare, you're going to remember that a little bit easier than you will having a pleasurable snack on the beach.
That's right.
Okay,
well said.
So
well
yes,
said.
There's all different sorts of things that actually happen, but I tried to distill it down into a more precise formula for you.
And what you just said about that negative emotions prevail over positive emotions, I think is no one can argue with that. Like you said, you're going to remember a nightmare more than you're going to remember, say, for me, a skydive or, a night out with a few beautiful women or something like that. Like you said, beautiful beach, white or clear ocean. You're not going to remember that as you would that haunting sort of fear that you might have through that nightmare. Now, you said you teach people in your seminars how to pay attention to certain things, because I know through Zox Pro, which is what you offer to people, that you tell people that one way for them to recognize what they photographed will come through their dreams, right?
Well, in Zox Pro, we actually don't go into the dream recall, okay? Simply because to explain it opens up so many questions, because people typically don't understand dreams in the first place. So whenever we have it in a seminar format or the coaching, well, then we have the latitude where we can explain it fully and answer any questions that may arise from that, from that particular topic. So we don't actually explore it in Zox Pro training. That doesn't make it any less valid, but we do actually explore it in the seminars and the coaching. Now, what we do actually have people do is chart out that or map out that sequence. In other words, the sequence, when your dreams are actually going to be active, and when you're in the various states of mind, and we actually show you the map how to create that, and you create it. And there's an extension off this as well, where some people may decide, gee, I want to go and be able to take a look at my dreams and see all the symbology. Well, if they so desire, they can do a dream study off this same information as well. So there's very practical ways to use this. And of course, if you wake yourself up at the right time, during the night or during the morning, you're more likely to remember your dreams that are occurring at that point, positive or negative. Okay? So if there's positive dreams to remember and you're waking yourself up while you have that opportunity, pretty good chance you'll have positive memories of dreams instead of such negative ones. The negative ones tend to wake us up.
That's true. And that's exactly probably why you actually remember it. For instance, that feeling of falling and you'll wake up just before you hit, say, a pit or the fall. That's what you're going to wake up to, and hence that's probably why it stays in your memory as that nightmare, because you woke up in it. And just the same, like you said, will happen in the positive way. Shannon, you put it in such a more brilliant way than a lot of people tend to even recognize the whole concept of why you remember one way, meaning the negative and fear, as opposed to not remembering the positive and how that can be changed. Now, let me ask you something that a lot of people might be saying who may be listening to the show. Since we're talking about mental photography and we talked about being taught to read, a lot of people who are in college or graduate school or any sort of school, absolutely, this is something that will definitely help them. But what about those people who are saying, well, hey, I'm no longer in school, or I'm retired, or I'm a firefighter, or I'm an attorney? Why would they need brain management and mental photography?
Well, you just gave me about 20 different questions all wrapped up into one. Okay, let's take older people. Older people, towards the end of life, what happens to them is their memory starts degrading because they have not taken the opportunity to exercise their brain and keep things fresh. The degradation happens faster. Now, it's not necessarily going to prevent, all these different avenues, because you're dealing with the medical condition of people and such. And I'm not a medical doctor; I don't know everything about everything. But at the same time, I do know that as people get older, after a certain point, their memories tend to decrease, and if they have not actually pursued mental exercises, mental gymnastics, keeping their mind fresh, well, that starts to degrade. Now, whenever people do mental photography, even older people, whenever they do mental photography, they increase their resilience because they're increasing their brain power. They're increasing the synapses. This is actually referred to as neuroplasticity, where you're actually building more brain cells, you're building more of the connections, and all the rest of the things that have to do with the brain. And you're actually stimulating that with the mental photography. So those people there, even though they're retired and sitting on a beach somewhere, they still have a huge amount that they can be gaining simply through the use of this process. How would you like to be 3 years away from death and you have lost your identity because you have lost your memory? And this is actually what happens. What happens to older people is the memory of who they are and what they're all about is gone when this happens. And so they've lost their identity. They've lost their will to live. And this is really something that truly does happen to people. It's a disgrace. It doesn't need to happen for most people that it happens to. But they have to exercise their brain first to build up that resiliency. So just for older people, this is great. Then you have executives. You want to stay an executive? In today's world, you have to be extremely competitive from the time that you enter the workforce to the time that you leave the workforce. You have to keep learning. It used to not be this way, but today it is. And you have to stay on top of your game. I've heard so many stories of people that have been overrun by the next younger generation.
Yeah.
And they have been made redundant by a new up-and-coming person that simply was raised with the information that they're lacking. Okay? Well, that's okay, because whenever that person gets up through the ranks, they too will probably be replaced by somebody that is younger than them and has newer information to work with. So you do see this system actually quite a bit. This is actually going on. In order for you to stay above it all, you have to exercise your brain. You have to get information in. You have to deal with that information on a usable level, and you have to stay fresh. Now, okay, go ahead.
No, I was actually listening to it, because that's exactly what you need to do, especially like you said, in today's world where you have to be on top of keeping up. And as you mentioned that statement where so many people have told you that somebody younger and maybe less experienced all of a sudden took that job, is because you have to keep learning, because times are keep changing, especially now. I think with the technology skyrocketing, or some new gadget or some new piece of technology or concept is introduced every day, if you're not competitive enough and staying on top of it, you're going to lose your job.
That's right, because the employer wants the the employer wants top people in those positions. Well, they'll get them, whether it be in you or in somebody else. Now, it's actually easier to keep your job than to change jobs, especially when you're older. So it's very important that if you're getting up around that age, you better figure out a way to keep your job, because older people have a placement problem. Just because of the fact that they're older, they have circumstances and agendas in the companies which the older people don't meet those agendas. Usually it's something like insurance and things like that. So again, there's a lot of different things that people are faced with today that 50 years ago they weren't faced with.
Now, let's take another class of people. Let's take the blue-collar worker, someone who does a job that really doesn't change much as far as day-to-day. They could predict what they did 5 years ago is essentially what they're going to be doing in 5 years as far as even technology. For instance, putting out a firefighter, you can always count that, sure, some of their gear might change, but for example, they're always going to resort to water or something else that they usually use to put out fires.
Well, even fires are complex, but before we go into that, I'll tell you about another way of looking at this. A blue-collar worker that is actually in a professional level, let's say an airplane mechanic, okay? Well, if you're an airplane mechanic, you better get things right, because people's lives are at stake, okay?
That's right.
We've had airplane mechanics learn the mental photography from us. They turn around and they use it on all their mechanical, all their shop manuals and all the rest of the things, how to take care of the engines, all the maintenance schedules, all the different things necessary to take care of various types of planes and what have you. They then become experts in their local guild. In other words, they become the top mechanics because they always seem to know the answer, whereas everybody else has to fish around for the answer. And they know it naturally. That's how it feels. You just know it. And of course, there it is right in front of you, and you just knew it, and you just took care of business. Okay? And that's one type of blue-collar worker. Another type of blue-collar worker, you can see the value, obviously, in having somebody that's specialized like an airplane mechanic. You can see the value in having somebody like that be able to simply get things fixed and know how to do it properly on the fly.
As you mentioned, an airplane and mechanic for airplanes, I would think people don't give as much respect as they really deserve, but yet there are so many airplanes flying in the sky, so many commercial flights at every single airport globally. If one little thing is wrong, that on those airplanes that have so many damn moving parts, like you said, not just 1 or 2 lives are at stake, which already is tragic. You're talking about hundreds, literally, if an airline goes down.
Right. So yes, these are great things for those people as well, because they get to, and also because of the nature of the 100%, you're getting 100% of the information. Because of the nature of that, what ends up happening is you gain insights before anybody else does. And those insights are very valuable.
Does this involve a lot of introspection?
Well, it depends on the person. Some people need that introspection. Some people don't. It depends upon how that person is actually operating as themselves. There is a certain amount of internalization that will be going on, but again, some of these things are so. It's almost like it shows up in a precariously. You get these insights, and you follow this insight through, and you find out gee, I was right, so now I can fix it. And it's just an insight. It's maybe everybody else has missed it, but for some reason you haven't.
Because you're paying attention, right?
Well, it's not that you're necessarily paying attention. It's that you just have more knowledge to work with and the wisdom to use it. See, when it comes to this sort of thing, you have information, which is your first level. You have knowledge and knowledge is the use of the information. Okay, well that can work in both ways. It can work to your benefit or it can work against you. But the wisdom is something that you get with mental photography straight up that you don't get from reading because it's embedded in the material. So whenever you take this on board this way, you're actually gaining the wisdom. That wisdom is full of insight. And it allows you to accomplish the most with the knowledge. Now, usually there's a long learning curve to take you from information to wisdom. With our system, it doesn't take you hardly takes you any time at all because you're getting all three levels at the same time. We're dealing with quantum physics here as well.
Thank you for opening that door. Let's talk about how this interacts with quantum physics, because as you go through the ZoxPro program, I've read a lot of the testimonials on ZoxPro.com of what people have actually been able to unlock. Some people call it their third eye. Other people call it a higher level of intuition. Other people might even call it a dip into quantum mechanics. And even Edgar Mitchell was somebody who used to talk about ZoxPro, and he at one time was a spokesperson for it because of what he experienced on Apollo 14.
Right. Now, Dr. Edgar Mitchell was actually a vice president of our company for a little while, and so during that time, we got to have some interesting conversations along the way. And yes, he basically said that about what our training is all about. Is really the bridge between the gurus and the disciples out there wanting to someday become a guru. It bridges the gap that nothing else seems to bridge. So that's pretty important whenever you think about the different specialties that you can deal with. But when it comes to the quantum physics, let's bring people back to this here. And furthermore, I haven't forgotten about the firefighters. If you're a firefighter out there, I don't want you to miss out, so we're going to have to get back to that topic. But when it comes to the quantum physics, I'll give you a rather straightforward way of looking at this. Whenever you're dealing with books that have been written by true experts, they have gravity to them. They'll feel heavier than a book that has been plagiarized. Okay? So in today's market, especially if you look on the internet, there's all kind of books out there, especially Amazon, things like this. Amazon actually has a problem with it. There's all kind of books out there that have been professionally plagiarized.
Yes, that's true.
Okay? And so our people learn how to discriminate between actual books written by real people that are actually doing the good work, and people that have plagiarized material. To our people that understand mental photography and use mental photography, those books feel empty. And that's basically the feeling that they get from a book that is plagiarized, because the person has invested themselves in the material. They're just rewriting or repeating something that somebody else has already written down. And so because of that, the quantum value isn't there. The frequency, the vibration, that was actually installed initially by the author. So if the author is a plagiarist and they don't actually have any real information to work with, then they bestow nothing, vibrationally speaking, upon the book. So you feel that. and our people learn to tune into that. So you could literally scan across all those books that they usually have in a whole string of books, all these different books that are under a similar topic. And you can actually, once you're familiarized with this, you can actually go through there and pick out the ones that are the good book, the one that actually is by the author that has more quantum information, if you will. Everything that is written, if it's written by a person, is left with an energy signature from that person. This is quantum physics. Everything in the world, everything in the universe is simply chaotic energy that has been transmuted into an energy and a frequency. And this is what we're working with. So the written word is no different. Whenever a person is writing these topics, then you have gravity whenever that's expressed. Now, if you want to learn martial arts very quickly, what you do is you find a martial arts book that has actually been written by a master. And you can do this with martial arts. You can do this with music. There's all different sorts of ways you can use this. But if you take that information that's written by a master, now if you're looking at a martial arts book, because all the diagrams there are so specific in exactly the movements that they have, it's probably taken the master 2, 3, 4 years, maybe more, to write a single book, because all the energy is put into the drawings. So whenever you mentally photograph this information, what you're getting the information, the knowledge, the wisdom. Whenever you go to involve yourself in that martial art, you don't have to go through such a curve as everybody else does. These things simply manifest through your body, and you start performing just like the book says. Now, you have to go through strengthening and conditioning and such like that still, because you still have to, make your muscles work completely like that. But a lot of the rudimentaries are simply taken away. You don't have the learning curve that everybody else does, simply because you're using mental photography to learn how to do this. And this is in any profession. If you're a firefighter, there's an additional benefit, and that is this gives you the ability to have insights in advance of your daily activities. If you feel that things aren't right, well, chances are they won't be. And this is one of the things that people need to come to terms with, is the fact that you can feel what is right and what isn't. And if you're in emergency services or in a dangerous career where you are, you don't know where the bullet's going to be flying from or when it's going to be flying, well, then you need to have something up your sleeve. It's called intuition, awareness. You need to be aware of your surroundings and act accordingly. And if something doesn't feel right, start looking around, because there's something not right, and you can get yourself in too deep too fast. And just like with firemen, there's a lot of things that can happen simply because you're operating in an environment that is unstable. And so, likewise, that's why police and firemen die, is because they hadn't anticipated something happening in that way.
Is this also a way to change your future? And this also actually ties into what we're talking, one of the topics of the last hour, of the laws of attraction. And that meaning that if we in Zox Pro bypass the conscious mind, which has the hippocampus, and goes straight to your subliminal and your subconscious memory, then if you implant something as a suggestion possibly, or a thought, that it manifests into reality. If taking that reasoning, is that a way people can change their future for the better or unfortunately for the worse sometimes?
Well, that's a bit of a trick question because you're actually looking at two different things when you look at the law of attraction. The law of attraction, one, you can't escape it. You're always involved in it no matter what. Okay? So that's a given. And I think pretty much anybody involved in the law of attraction will agree with me on that. Where the law of attraction feels like it lets certain people down is whenever you actually are meant to learn lessons. Okay? You still must learn your lessons. Now, always getting out from underneath whatever it is that's compounding, by using the law of attraction, well, that's okay until it comes to a lesson. Lessons are things that you have to learn. So there's various things that you do have to incur, even though they may be something that you don't want to do, or something that is going to cause you pain, which pain is a direct relationship with lessons. So these are things, basically, we're born here to this earth to go through life, to experience life to its fullest. And that means that you need to go through life experiencing your lessons and experiencing the pain that comes with those, because it's integrative to both those things. Now, the law of attraction can help us in overcoming a lot of these things much quicker, much easier. A lot of these lessons you can even deal with through observations of others going through similar lessons and taking them on board for yourself. So there are some things that you can do that way as well. It's not a closed loop type circumstance at all. Each individual has their own path in front of them, and each individual should learn these things simply so that they can then take it on board for themselves and understand that they're going to be better for learning these things and employing these things. Yes, the law of attraction is a wonderful thing to do, and force, basically get yourself involved with using it on a daily basis. That's great. I encourage all my clients to do it. But you also have to realize that your life is a very multifaceted gem. It plays out as it's meant to play out, and you're always involved in it.
Let me ask you about the length of the training for Zox Pro. What's the average time that it takes someone from start to finish to master mental photography?
Well, when it comes to Zox Pro training, what I recommend, because Zox Pro training is actually delivered on a conscious level. Being that it's delivered on a conscious level, this is something that I understand certain principles, and that is the first time through anything on a conscious level, you're pretty much skimming over it. You're really not getting any of the detail. It takes you 3 times before you're going to start getting the detail. And this is really important for people to realize. If they go and they take Zox Pro training, if they take the time and go through it 3 times before actually employing the exercises, by the time they get around to employing the exercises will be easy to employ because you'll already know what you're doing and why you're doing it. The problems that I see is whenever a person goes and they immediately jump into doing all the exercises, and because this is how they've learned to do it from everybody else, they jump in, do all the exercises, but they don't even know why they're doing them.
That's true.
And so they get
absolutely
frustrated.
True. That's the way our mainstream school teaches you to do, and that's why most people don't remember anything.
I want stayers. I want people to have results. I know what it takes to have results. This is a mental discipline. It will take people time to integrate this way of thinking into their way of life. But the rewards are huge.
Now,
And that's,
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say something huge, that we have to unlearn what school has taught us. And in some way, Shannon, people or children who aren't even at the level of that they're forced to read, the way I mentioned that we have to traditionally look at something, vocalize what the words and sentences said, put that thought into our head, and then translate that into from short-term, long-term memory. Isn't it possible or even greater as far as the people who may be 4 years old or their children, grandchildren, to actually learn Zox Pro and have them be better off when they hit school as opposed to people who may have just finished school?
well, absolutely. If you learn mental photography prior to learning to read, you'll have a natural gravity for information. Plus, you'll be a better reader than anybody else you know, simply because you're actually still utilizing the photographic memory, the eidetic memory. But the normal school system, they teach us to abandon our photographic memory and replace it with reading.
Yes.
They say, well, that's the childlike way of learning. We're going to teach you how to learn like adults. Well, there's the problem right there. Okay? So what they do is they have you replace it. It's not that you've lost the ability, you've misplaced it. Okay? It's been directed away from you. And if you take a look at the statistics, if you take a look at the results, what you find is whenever people learn to read, their learning actually goes down for the rest of their life from that point. So if a person learns mental photography before or during when they're learning to read, well, then they bring it right along with them, and they become super at dealing with information instead of lagging.
Now, Shannon, we have a little over 5 minutes left for this show, and I want to focus on Zox Pro, and I want to let everyone know listening that if you go to our website, drjradiolive.com, and you see the banner Zox Pro, you could click on it and go directly to it. Not only what you offer, Shannon, but I do want to tell people that there is a huge bonus that I got right off the bat long before I even signed up and met you through this course, which is Einstein's distraction method. And honestly, that has been one of the greatest things that it's so simple, yet it fixes so many problems that a lot of people I don't think even recognize exists because of what schools are meant to teach us.
Okay. Well, basically, schools don't teach you how to concentrate. If anything, they teach you how to break your concentration.
Be distracted, exactly, to be distracted.
Right. So basically, Einstein developed this technique as a child. He was 14 years old, which even in today's world is still more of a child. But at 14 years old, he invented this, and he carried it through with him his entire life. And it enabled him to have 100% concentration. Well, it was his secret little tool. It wasn't even found until after his death. And then it was brought up and revealed. But what this is, it's an ability. It gives you the ability to have 100% concentration on any given thing for a certain period of time. This is actually the first module of Zox Pro training, and we actually give that away so that people can help themselves in increasing their concentration ability. The schools don't teach you this. You have to learn it in a great way, and this is the best way. Somebody that you can definitely point out and say this person was a definite genius, and he knew what he was doing when he learned how to deal with his own concentration level. So granted, this is a great way to learn concentration. You get it for free. On that, and that you also get a chance to see what ZoxPro training is like, because this is actually the first module of ZoxPro training. We want everybody to learn how to concentrate. On top of that, there's there's a lot of other things that are happening that are great. We have ZoxPro training, we have seminars, we have the coaching for those that really want to get up to their necks in really creating a great life for themselves using this process. So there's all the above, and of course with the ZoxPro training, a lot of people start there, and it's a great way to go. Again, it is a discipline. You need to use it every day, but the rewards, it will pay off huge, and it'll keep expanding your entire life. You'll keep using it.
I have to definitely say about the distraction method, Shannon, I went from 14 distractions in 3 minutes to 0 in 21. And that right there is to show everybody listening that it does work. And literally, you do offer it for free. And if it wasn't for that working so greatly, it wouldn't have been one of the reasons why I jumped into getting ZoxPro. And I did mention it's available on our website to click on your banner. And you mentioned that it's the first module, the Einstein's distraction method. How many modules are there?
There's 8 modules. Also, just to briefly go aside for a moment, we have another website, which is a very important website. It's called brainmanagement.com. Okay, so please make sure if you're visiting our sites, make sure that you include that as one of the sites you visit. But back to ZoxPro, we have 8 modules, and over that 8 modules, you can easily go through it the first time, probably in 3 or 4 days. The second time you go through it, you'll probably go through it faster because you kind of understand it a little bit more. And third time, you go through it even faster. But the main thing is we want you to make sure and understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. We don't want you to be frustrated. We want people that are getting results. And this is what it takes to get results. But the results are lifelong. You only have to pay once, and you get lifelong results, and we keep giving you updates.
Let me also ask you briefly before we go, the meditation is an important process to ZoxPro. Can you tell everyone why?
Well, you're dealing with your subconscious. Your subconscious is key to you doing what you need to do for yourself, because your subconscious is your doer. Your conscious mind, on the other hand, is your procrastinator. It is the thing that stops you from actually doing. So likewise, anything that you truly want to participate in, you want to gain access to your subconscious and provide support coming from that area so that you can do what you need to do. In other words, programming. And if you learn how to program your subconscious, then there's an unlimited number of things that you can be doing for yourself right now to make your life better. Just in that one thing. Meditation's great.
Well said. Now, before we go, I want to again mention everybody that you can go to ZoxPro.com either just by hearing it or by clicking the banner on our website, and also brainmanagement.com. Shannon, if you could give one final statement for everybody, what would you say?
Whether it be a student, a professor, a professional, or a professor in that case, or a retired person, the reason why you need this may change from time to time, but it actually fills all the gaps. That's a wonderful thing. And the more that you exercise your brain, the better you're going to be at everything that you do.
Well said. Shannon Panza, everybody remembers ZoxPro.com is available on drjradiolive.com. I do want to thank Joe Montaldo of United Public Radio Network, UPRN, we're broadcasting from, as well as JC of Deprogram Radio in the United Kingdom. Also, two important members of the team I want to thank are my social media manager, Pam Brettenberg, and also my assistant producer and VP of Operations, Mr. Josh Terres. And remember, the only thing you have to remember when it comes to this show is the name of it, Dr. J Radio Live. That is DRJ Radio Live. And that includes everything from YouTube, BitTube, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Facebook, Minds, you name it, it's all the same thing. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J, and I am officially signing off to go watch the State of the Union, even though it's over.